Welcome to the Old Young Ones, and we are here. We're at the end. This is summer holiday. This is the final episode 6, season 2.
This is the end.
This is
my only friend.
It's the end of the Young Ones. There was no Young Ones reunion special. There was no Young Ones movie. There are other series which have this talent in there. There was Bottom. Filthy Rich and Cat Flap.
Yep.
Never saw that actually.
But we are at the end. We're on the final episode, and I'm your host John Clark. With me, as always, is Howie Weingarten. How are you, Howie?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. And then you might hear a slight echo because Joe Pakovits is back due to audience demand. Joe Pakovits is back.
Yeah.
Joe did the finale.
We couldn't hear him.
Joe did the finale of season 1, Flood, and all we heard on YouTube was that we couldn't hear you. Joe, can we hear you now?
You can hear me now. Yes.
Woohoo!
Oh yeah,
works perfectly. What happened? If you're really into audio files, Joe is the only person that came over to do the stream. Everyone else has been remote, and because we were facing each other, we turned our mics down because there was a lot of echoing, and then we turned him way down and we couldn't get him back. So for this one, I kicked him out and he's in my dining room.
Exiled.
Eating.
Yeah. But here we are.
He's having your dinner.
Actually, we're getting dinner after this. You're the one missing
You're
out.
the one missing dinner.
Right.
We got pizza coming. What do you got?
Oh, pizza.
You don't have pizza.
You don't like pizza.
So we have let's get into it. Let's get into the episode. The first thing I felt with this episode was there's a sense of finality that runs through the whole thing. This is not a show.
Yeah.
This is not a show where, like, at the end they decided let's not do a third season. They went into this going, we're gonna burn everything down.
Yeah, it felt like a greatest hits album. Really, here's all the bits that we did that worked, and we're just gonna update it a little bit. It's like a remastered greatest hits album.
It did, and it also felt like a farewell tour. There was this feeling of, like, even when it starts, and we start with Vivian and Mike in the backyard, which is a set they built for Sick for the last episode,
right?
Where we sow the seeds, nature grows the seeds, we eat the seeds. But they spend a lot of time in here again, and it's like, oh, we just have this set, but they spend a lot of time away from the house, and I feel like starting it outside of the house, we're already out of our comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And some of the energy just doesn't seem to be there. Like a lot of the slapstick just felt a little bit forced, a little bit slower. I think Rick was mugging a little much. It's like they were trying to reach for something. It's not the excitement of figuring out how television works, like like you guys discussed in the first few episodes. They're kind of, I get the sense they went into this kind of going like, okay, what do we do now? How do we end this thing?
Or they're kind of over it. I feel like all right, we'll we'll get into it, but it's it's not as much. You're right. There is a lower energy. It's almost, is it hyperbole to say it's funereal? Like,
well, a couple of key losses. The loss is definitely mentioned in this episode. We'll get there when we start talking about the actual events of the episode, but there is a palpable sense of loss, like you said, funereal, like we're burying this thing once and for all. It's not going to come back.
Yeah, and to be on episode 12, it's kind of shocking. So, but we start with a pairing we don't see a lot, but a pairing that really works, which is Mike and Vivian.
Yep.
I don't think we've really seen them alone together since Viva El Presidente in episode 2. But now we have
very rarely.
So Vivian's outside with like hoop shorts and a Gumby hat.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Mike's just reading the paper, and they go into this it felt very Marx Brothers to me. It felt very Groucho and Chico.
Right.
Like do ants go to discos?
Yeah. And then of course you see the ants talking about discos because you got the puppets in there, you know.
Yeah, well, that's where we get our awful, awful puppets that Howie seems
Yes.
to truly enjoy. But it's a nice little bit of do ants go to discos? Ants are highly intelligent. The last thing they go to is discos.
Discos.
And it's total absurdism. It's total almost surrealism. And like everything else on the show, it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the point, I think, is that all throughout the series, one of the themes has been the feeling that was in Britain at that time. We're talking about the era of Thatcher, of young people just feeling like they're being dead-ended. Like they almost have to kick these guys out of college and see what they do for a short time, because you can't imagine these guys really making it in the real world. Surprisingly, maybe Neil might, but I mean, these guys are such creatures of their situation.
And we'll see that in the episode. This is the episode where they have to face real life, and it goes downhill really quickly. I always thought that Bottom was the sequel to Young Ones, and I know, honestly, their names. I mean, Rick is still Rick, and Vivian is Eddie.
Right.
But I kind of think maybe Eddie was his real name, and that's it. Mike and Neil are long out of the picture, and they just share this like stupid little apartment that his aunt left him. And I feel like that's where they end up. It's kind of like we were talking before about the new Beavis and Butthead episodes, which I think are absolutely brilliant. It's Mike Judge at his best. And they do these episodes now where if Beavis and Butthead had aged in real time and they're in their 50s. Yeah. And their life is just horribly pathetic. And I think it's hilarious. And it bothers Howie on a molecular level.
It does. That they've never gotten past like who they were when they were teenagers. I mean, even John and I have gotten past where we were teenagers. I mean, come on. Yeah, we're not setting a high bar either.
We used to have these conversations in front of a cassette deck.
But that's part of the thing about the young ones, though. It's like, you can't imagine these guys getting, growing in any personal way. They're dead enders. They are stuck, and they're not going to move on. And that's the whole thing. I kind of contrast this with Always Sunny, another ensemble comedy where everybody's horrible and nobody seems to ever learn any life lessons from their disasters.
No,
that's one of the things I love so much about Always Sunny is that it's gone 15 seasons and they've skipped years. So the show's like almost 20 years old. So they have to age. Yeah. And their stories are changing to reflect that. We don't see that with this because it's, we've said it every episode. It's almost, you can make a drinking game out of it. I'm having Woodford's Reserve. But we call it the punk sitcom. Drink every time we call this a punk sitcom.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. And just like punk music was kind of, again, a dead end. It could only go so many places before it kind of, petered out. It had its heyday and then it petered out.
It's funny.
That's what these guys are. We
were having this conversation about punk. I went to see Green Day last month. And people love to say how they're not punk. And, they created pop punk. But Rancid opened for them. And Rancid, pure punk.
Yes.
These guys had the shittiest guitars on stage. They looked terrible. They had faded tattoos. And they just played punk. And, we walked in the middle of their set. And it was still enough punk. And so Green Day had to go past punk to make punk evolve and write things like ballads. And they got a lot of pushback from that. So if you're pure to that, if you're pure to that lifestyle, there's nowhere to go.
Right. And if you try to make these four guys grow, you have to radically change the feel of the show. You can't really give them any great emotional depth or let them learn anything, because all of a sudden now you've got a completely different show than the young ones.
Yeah. It's funny because like when the show started for me, it felt like, okay, like they kind of knew that they were done. They kind of knew that they were that this was it. They were not going to go further than this. This was most likely the last time the four of them would be together. And I thought, like, I thought like at first, like with the ants in the disco and that stuff, it was just kind of like okay, back to the puppets as we just said before. But then it's kind of like I thought like the opening scene, like just really just doubled down on what their personalities are. Vivian is bored and violent. He's only entertained by mayhem. Mike is just basically just sitting there like just half-assing it through life, being like, well, you know what? When Rick says, oh, the tutor says you need to show up or whatever, and just and the dean, he goes, well, tell the tutor I still have pictures of him and the dean, and then Rick comes in just completely like over the top, excited Rick as he normally is, and finally Neil, depressed as anything.
I love Neil's monologue.
His monologue is amazing.
I like Rick's energy, and I feel like it's so in tune with what we're saying because he's trying to manifest this energy, which no one is picking up on.
Yeah.
He comes out singing Schools Out, Alice Cooper.
The Alice Cooper, yeah.
But it's more of the feeling of, it's like post-graduation. Well, now what the hell do I do? Like,
right.
I guess I go back to my summer job and I stay there until something changes. It has that feeling to it. I do love Neil's monologue, which is a great, he's got everything set up for the test. And he's like, and then the professor said, stop writing, please.
Just as he's getting going.
And then it was funny because like it just turns into like, oh, okay, so what can we do to make ourselves feel better? We'll make fun of Neil. Like you said, one of the greatest hits. Make fun of Neil, bring Neil down. Right. And it's just kind of like,
and there are some really great jokes in it.
Oh yeah.
There was some really like,
and by the way, I want to get into this now because this comes up a lot. This is the meanest I've ever seen Mike. He's mean in this.
Yeah. Well, it's also
mean.
It's also one of the episodes where we see the most of Mike, really. A lot of times he's just kind of in the background or he's there for one key
well,
scene.
He's the straight man. He's usually doing some, and we mentioned this on other episodes. He's usually doing some business in the background. Right. And on this podcast, I've really been watching him because in scenes where he's not in, he's usually doing something interesting.
In this sitcom.
He's almost the voice of reason.
Yep.
Yeah. He really, I mean, the thing is that with Mike, the thing is that, I mean, I agree with you guys. I mean, he's really a jerk in this episode. From what he said, what's ugly, stupid, and smelly and standing in front of me named Neil.
Yes. It's so mean. It's one of my favorite jokes in it because you could stop it, but just in case he's not hurt enough. And it's standing in front of me named Neil. I love that joke.
Neil just kind of confirms it. Me. And it's just
But then he also turns into the Hulk, which I was like,
oh my God.
That was funny. That was
because I guess was the Hulk big at this time?
Well, you know what? I just looked it up as we were talking. The Hulk, the Bill Bixby series, which is clearly it's modeled after more than the comic,
right?
It ended in 1982. This episode aired in 1984.
Okay,
so it's like it was very much in the pop. I mean, look, you're talking to three guys that bought a lot of comic books. Yeah. We know when the Hulk was part of the pop culture,
right?
But this was a couple years later. I mean, everybody still knows what the Hulk is, but it wasn't like the Dallas parody in time.
Right.
No, but I think it worked just as well. I mean, the thing is that like all of a sudden he's just throwing all three of them around and stuff, including Mike, who's never really part of any phisical kind of stuff, much less violence, right?
Well,
and then all of a sudden they're like, Neil, what happened to your clothes?
But I love that because it's a fantasy, but the only thing that's actually real is the bad part for him.
Right.
Like he doesn't get revenge on any of them. He doesn't have superpowers, but he does lose his clothes.
Well, he does what a lot of the audience members want to do and just like throw these guys through a wall or something. It's just
and you figure that's that's the peak, right? You figured that's the climax, is that they would be torturing him. He turns into the Hulk, and for this show, he really could turn into the Hulk.
He could.
But no, that's the
is-
middle of it, because he shrinks back down, and they still keep torturing him.
And they still keep
You know?
hammering him. Yeah.
And I do
You know?
love that joke where he goes inside the house, and they talk about him behind his back, even though they've yelled at him. To
And
his
he's an
face.
eavesdropper.
And he's sticking
Yeah.
his head out of the window. I heard that.
I heard that.
You know,
I love
as
that
if
joke.
that does anything.
So simple.
You know,
It's like
It's-
Marx Brothers simplicity.
it's
Yep.
funny because there's this one joke that Mike says. It's actually at the very beginning. We're just like, oh, you have to wake up pretty early to get one past you, Mike. He goes, oh, you have to stay up all night. I never forgot that joke.
It's a good
Yeah.
line.
Never. It's a great line.
It's not even a joke. It's just a good, clever line.
It's a good,
Yep.
clever line. It's
Yeah,
a good, clever
Like I
line.
said, I do like that Vivian and Mike have a long time in this episode. They have the most comfortable relationship out of any of the four. There's no
Oh, yeah.
tension
I think there's
between
more
Vivian
respect
and Mike.
between the two of them.
Yes.
There's more respect
Well,
between the two of them.
Nobody respects Rick or Neil at all.
No,
I kind
no.
of figure that Mike's kind of like this father figure for Vivian almost. You know, he's
Yeah.
got this pent up rage and doesn't know what to do with it. And Mike
Right,
channels
right.
it for him.
Right. You know.
He's the Floyd to his animal.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And it's funny because like when you talk about like the father figure, you know, and I don't know if I'm jumping a little bit ahead right now in this punk sitcom. Oh, yeah.
You're the only one playing this
But-
game.
Yeah, what the fuck? Come on, guys. I'm playing
I
with
put my
myself.
glass down when you said it. That's
You know?
not fair.
Don't let me play with myself. Anyway.
We once did a podcast called Audio Commentaries of Audio Commentaries, predates Caffeinated Comics, and we watched Jingle All the Way, and we turned it into a drinking game
Yeah.
where you had to take a drink anytime someone said Turbo Man. And then about an hour in, we had each drunk a bottle of wine. And I said, okay, only when Arnold says it. And you can hear on the podcast, there's a scene. Now, if you don't know Jingle All the Way backwards and forwards, you got to watch it every year. It's
It's a good Christmas movie.
my youngest son
Yeah.
calls it Jingle All the Day because Christmas Eve is when we have to watch Jingle All the Way.
Mhm. Nice.
But there's a scene where Arnold had it with Turbo Man and starts screaming at Anakin Skywalker. And he's like, all right, here's Superman, no more Turbo Man, I can't take the Turbo Man. And you hear us gasping for air on the
Oh my god.
But that's when I swore off drinking games because I created one that turned
No.
on me.
Oh no.
So
You know?
we cut to Neil goes in and we go to this sketch, which a lot of people confuse with Monty Python because Monty Python already did it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Python in its final season, the John Cleese season, they do a sketch called "The Worst Family in Britain,"
Mhm.
and it's basically this scene.
Right. Only
Yeah.
they're in Neil's room.
Of course they are.
They took over Neil's room because
Because I wonder who said, I know who. You know,
Yeah.
he knows.
And
Mike
again,
read
a greatest
that
hits
out,
because
yeah.
we already had Mike turn Rick's room into a roller disco in season
Yeah,
one.
sure. Why
So we
wouldn't
don't
it be?
need it, and that's the only thing that I'm like, I felt like it was a waste because it's the same sketch as Python, and it's not as good as Python because the thing everybody remembers about that sketch is Terry Gilliam screaming beans.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
run out of beans, and he's lying down on the couch, just like
Well, this is-
spraying baked beans everywhere.
Well, plus it's just a meaner version of that Python sketch.
Yeah, it's like more
you're
hateful.
not supposed to have any sympathy for anybody in that.
No, not at all.
And again, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just there to have that scene. But I felt like it didn't have anything to say that Python didn't say better 10 years ago. And
Right.
obviously, these guys worship Python. We talked about it episode after episode.
Yeah.
They do the cheese shop for like
Yep.
2 seconds in one episode,
Mm,
so they know that this sketch existed. It's kind of like
for
Howie.
sure.
Well, it's like Howie and I had this famous VHS tape, which we lost and never put on YouTube, about a guy that wants to lift the Atlantic Ocean over his head. And
Yeah.
a week after we made it, we realized that we had completely ripped off Python, where Terry Jones was going to jump the English Channel. It's the exact
Yeah.
same sketch. Even the
exa-
manager's the same character.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes
For
it gets
sure.
into your
It's a
DNA.
complete rip. It's a complete rip off.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's more of a homage to Python, I think.
Well, it's a
Yeah,
homage once you get caught. I
Right.
just saw this is
It's a
now one of
homage
the-
once you get caught.
caught,
Nice.
Now we're in non
Nice.
sequitur, but I found a clip of Spinal Tap meeting Metallica
Oh,
in
really?
the 90s. It's really funny, and I just rabbit holed it on YouTube because it's all three of those: Michael McKean and Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer, and obviously every metal band loves Spinal Tap.
Right.
And so they come to yell at James Hetfield for stealing their idea for the Black Album,
Oh, wow.
and they're like,
That's
Wow.
hysterical.
And they're like, well, it sold pretty well. And Michael McKean's like, well, they put the snake on it, and Christopher Guest goes, Oz would have sold better if it had a snake on it. And Harry Shearer went, Oz would have sold better if it said Metallica on it.
That's funny.
And that's when
That's
Christopher Guest
fucking-
goes, well, it's an homage.
It's an homage. I like that.
You did know, and Michael McKean said, well, it sold well because it was an homage. If it didn't sell well, it would be a lawsuit.
That's right.
But that
No.
that sparked my homage.
By the way, I just wanted to just not cutting that off, but I just wanted to get back to something that you
No,
guys
I finished. That's how these conversations work.
Oh, okay, great. Good. You're done. Anyway, so the thing is that when you guys were talking about like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, do you remember the episode where they had the game that made no sense? That's what I
my
thought
favorite,
about.
Charlie McDennis.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just all
With
of their
this-
names thrown together.
Thrown together.
With this episode, right?
Mhm.
Rick says like, "Oh, we're bored. Why don't we play a game?"
Yeah.
And they come up with this game, and it's the stupidest game ever. And it's like,
Well,
one-
it's 20 questions, but he calls it Botticelli.
Yeah, it's the
I-
British version. It's an actual thing.
is
So you-
it?
Yes.
Because it
believe
seems
or
like
not.
the dumbest game ever.
But it was just 20 questions. And
Yeah,
and that goes into like that routine. That's an Abbott and Costello routine right there.
But to me,
Yeah.
it's like Rick,
it's like, I'm
Rick
A.
took 20 questions and made it completely like this doesn't make any sense to the point where the others are just frustrated and just like he's finally like, well, if you know, like if I guess the answer, am I the best? Do I win? And they're like, yes,
Yeah.
you win. You know,
Yeah,
it's
they
just
finally capitulate to one of his stupid ideas, just to get.
Finally.
Well, out of exhaustion.
Yeah.
yeah. It's just like, are you a 12th century druid?
Yeah, that was
What?
funny. Oh man.
You know, again, that's Mike, and it's Mike, and like we were talking about, as he's being mean, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just like, and it's just, it's finally, it's a game that neither one of these guys can win,
No.
but leads directly into a game that they can win, or a game to their advantage called cricket.
Yeah.
You know,
And by the
Which-
way, at the end of that, when Rick goes, I was Paul Squires. I'm looking it up now, and I'm finding 50 Paul Squires, which means that guy was not that famous.
Right.
you know, it's like somebody with a head up his
Richard.
with somebody with his head up a duck's ass or something like that. I forget who that was. That was hysterical.
Oh yeah, where he's like a 14th century, 14th century like iconoclast. He's like,
Yep.
He's like Alan Smith. Of course it is. I just made him up.
I just made him up. And then of course they have to take their final shot at Thatcher.
Yeah.
'Cause
Oh,
that's
yeah.
That's also a recurring theme. You know, again, the greatest hits tour. You know, let's
You
throw
know?
a Thatcher
Right. Yeah.
joke.
Because they go back in the house and they're fighting, and then I do like Vivian's slapstick in this. He literally has a slapstick.
Yeah, and literally, it's like
That
something out of
foam cricket bat,
Commedia
yeah.
dell'arte or something.
Oh, the foam cricket bat, because you
Yeah.
could see it wiggle.
Well,
Yep.
he's really swinging. He's like,
wiggle.
board. He's swinging it. And I noticed that Rick and Aid were such a good slapstick team that Rick's reaction is better than anyone else's, better than Nigel
Yep.
Platter or Chris Ryan. Like, he knows exactly how to react when that thing comes down.
Yeah.
He seems like he hits Rick harder. And I realized, no, that's Rick's reactions.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's been taking his abuse for like, you know, already 11 episodes. He knows exactly what's going on, you know.
Yeah. And, and they started with
They know
Dangerous
exactly.
Brothers before this.
These guys are pros.
Yeah.
You
And then
know?
Rick gets set on fire and he's not
Yeah.
like
You know?
annoyed.
He gets set on fire.
He's
and
crawling
then-
through the house with his butt on fire. That was-
Mike mercifully, you know, extinguishes them.
Yeah.
But then I think one of the funniest of all is it leads right into Neil running down the steps going, surprise!
It's the meanest goddamn thing. Like it
That was so
It hurts
fucking
my feelings every time
You
I
know?
watch it, and I have no feelings watching this show.
you know.
And
And
when
the
he
funny
brings the birthday cake down,
you know,
and they all just
could
start
the birthday
ripping.
cake could have put its hand up your chopper or something like that,
Yeah.
or your
Well,
jumper?
well, Mike says, which I think is the meanest Mike line he ever said. It seemed like it was a Rick line that Mike took from him. He's like, why? He's like, why are you saying surprise? Oh, he goes, usually you don't interest me, but today you have.
Yeah,
Why are
there
you
have.
yelling surprise? He's like, because it's my birthday. And you hear the audience like,
Go,
oh, and he goes, well, you already knew that and we don't care. So where's the
Yeah,
surprise? It's so
exactly.
cold.
yeah.
Yep.
And you could tell, like this show is 84. This was definitely, I mean, if Elton was writing this, with the meanness of those lines, those were the precipice for Blackadder.
Oh,
I
God,
mean,
Oh
yeah.
yes.
I mean, like
Absolutely.
that was. I mean, I think this show, this episode in particular, had the most meanest line, the most
Oh,
meanest
yeah.
lines.
They had the
I
most
feel
lines
like-
that you
I
could.
feel
All the episodes. It's just like, oh, just like I cannot believe that's cruel.
It
And
had the
then-
most number of lines you could put into a Blackadder episode, and they would
Yeah.
slot in perfectly.
Perfectly,
Yeah.
perfectly.
They're like, that
And-
could be Baldrick's birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Exactly.
You know,
But I do love
And
we cut
then-
into we go from like the meanest moment to the most surreal moment maybe ever for the young ones. Where like now where Niels does a great monologue about how much they hate him.
Mhm.
But they cut to him on the screen and then someone starts drawing on the screen with no
Yeah, right.
special effects.
no,
and then they erase it. And then when they erase it, and it's Chris Ryan's voice, it's Mike's voice who goes,
yeah, it's Chris
"Oh,"
Ryan.
he's like, oh no, now Elephant Head will come on and start singing. And that is so Python-esque surrealist. That has never left my. There are so many times where things have gotten so quiet and boring that I have thought, oh no, now Elephant Head is
Elephant
gonna
Head's
come
gonna
on and
It's like,
sing.
where did that come from? That is genius.
nowhere.
It's genius.
Came
It's
from
fucking
watching
genius.
Python,
In
Yep.
this punk sitcom. Oh,
Yep.
ah. Hmm.
and he sings "Stop in the Name of Love."
Stop. That's what I've. God.
Which
What
is a
the
perfect
fuck?
song for that moment. Hilarious.
Oh
It's-
my
and it just
God.
and it just does a wipe. It just does a wipe from the top
Yep.
down. We don't get at it and that in any way.
Mhm.
No, it just
Like
ends.
they don't say, "Oh, we brought it back." You know what it's like? It's like Gremlins 2.
How so?
Do you remember Gremlins 2?
No.
Gremlins 2 is like Batman Returns, where it's a sequel that is actively shitting on the first movie by the guy who made the first movie. It's really, but there's a moment where
Okay.
there's a moment in the middle of that movie where the film breaks, and then the Gremlins start doing shadow puppets on the screen, and then they cut to the actual theater where
Mhm.
the usher is played by like the B movie legend who's in Eating Raoul and Shopping Mall, and he gets Hulk Hogan to yell at the Gremlins, but he's actually yelling at us, the audience.
Yep.
And then they put the movie back on.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
You're looking like you don't remember this.
Yeah, there's a
do not
couple of
remember this.
instances in this where they do their habitual let's break the fourth wall. There's one coming up in just a minute about the refrigerator.
I will say the final, if you want to know the final word about Gremlins 2, the new batch, which,
Sure. Tell
totally
us.
worth watching.
Lay it on us.
There is
Yeah.
a Key and Peele sketch that is absolutely genius, where Jordan Peele comes out and is a studio executive, and he takes every idea they have. He's like, I don't know, electricity gremlin, and one of the writers goes, "Can Hulk Hogan be in it?"
Wow.
And at the end of it, he
That's
leaves.
not bad.
At the end of it, he leaves, and Keegan looks at the writers and goes, "All right, none of that's going to be in the movie." And it freezes and says, "All of that is actually in the movie."
In the movie.
Oh my God. That's
I'm telling you,
funny.
it's the reason there's no Gremlins 3.
Yeah.
They haven't even been able to reboot Gremlins after this movie. It's
Mhm.
like if after Batman Returns came out, Warner Brothers said, "Fuck it, no more Batman."
No more Batman movies. For
No
you.
more.
Instead of
No more.
firing Tim Burton, they just shut it down.
No.
All right, so
Well-
then we go to a very typical young one scenario, the bad party, which
Right.
we've had them host a bad party. We've had them come home from a party.
This
Now,
wasn't a party.
Well, no one else
He
was
said
invited.
it was a party. You know, Rick threw a party. You know, Rick was just like, oh, he's throwing a party, right? And everyone had their friends come over. No one came over for Neil's party.
Warlock doesn't come over. Warlock is
Warlock
established as Neil's stoner friend in two different episodes, and he's not there.
He's not even there.
No, he's not even there. And the funny thing is that, like, I think he's just like, so you having a good time? And Neil's like, Vivian's like, great. He says, oh, and he goes over to Mike. He's like, everything good? He's like, yeah. You know, and for some reason, now I forget what the transition is. This is the very last time, though. And I say, Ben Elton has had some of the.
Oh yeah. What happens is they complain that there's no booze at the party.
Yeah.
And Vivian goes, "Where's the bloody lager?" And they cut to a lager commercial.
Yeah.
And Howie, you can explain what happens.
Oh my God! So it's Ben Elton, and he's basically just at a bar, and basically he's like, he's just like, I was going to drink this beer, but she could see right through me. But now I'm drinking this beer, and now she's going to screw me. And it's like, it's like Hawk beer, stay witty and sexist at the bottom of every, glass, whatever.
Which I've looked this up, was a real campaign at the time.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
There really was a Hawk beer, and that was the kind of, and it's early 80s. Like everything about cigarettes and alcohol were all about one night stands. Yeah. There's a brilliant sketch that Gilda Radner did in the original Saturday Night Live, where she wears a cologne called Hey You. And she goes to a bar, and it's a film bit. It's not in 30 Rock. She goes to a bar and she sprays this on and looks at some guy and says, "Hey you," and then they cut to her like leaving the guy's apartment in the morning. It was of that culture, so everything was like, you're going to get laid.
Yeah,
wow, every beer commercial was that easy.
Well, they took pre-AIDS. Like we all grew up post-AIDS. None of that existed.
No.
We went back to the 50s for a while, except there were just a lot of commercials telling you to buy condoms, and we were like, for who?
Yeah.
Howie and I'm going to tell this story. Howie and I were so loveless at this point, we were watching the young ones, that we bought a box of condoms that had already expired. It was 1991, and we bought them from a store that expired in April 1990. So for 5 more years, our code for condoms was 490.
The 490s.
The 490s.
Yeah.
We would go out to a bar and be like, I think we're gonna get lucky. Gotta buy me some 490s.
490s.
And then we came home drunk and alone.
Yeah.
Like a Smith song.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So this
also at that time.
So this sketch is pure parody. But when we were seeing it, Joe, in the late 80s in America and us in the early 90s in America, we didn't have the parody of it. So it just seemed to be this like complete, it was like Elephant Head starts singing. It was
right. It was just like, what is going on here?
That's right.
In the early 80s and late 70s, early 80s, where every commercial had bikini chicks, running around.
Spuds McKenzie, they just dressed up as a dog and said he drank beer.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, you remember there's a Simpsons where there's like feminists protesting. There's a commercial where feminists protesting and they spray him with Duff beer, and the signs change to like "I'm easy," and they turn it to bikinis.
Buy me drinks, I'm easy.
Yeah,
they turn it to like just real hoes and stuff like that.
God, you can't beat early Simpsons. 96. It's a level above.
Yeah, but it's funny.
I will say this party gave me a line that I used. Remember when desktop themes were a thing? Where you change your wallpaper and you change your icon and you change your signs. There's a line here when you for about 6 months when you turn to my computer, Vivian would say, "I'm very sober and very, very bored."
Lord.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And that rang just in my long-term memory when he said it's a great Vivian line.
Well, and it's funny because you go first.
Oh, I was just saying it's a great line because that's a lot of college and post-college life. I mean, everybody can relate to that on some level. like all great comedy, there's that kernel of truth in there that
Mhm.
somebody actually said out loud.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and the funny thing is that like Vivian's like complete diatribe of being sober and bored leads into one of the funniest things when he says when Rick is they start talking about like he's just like Rick is into the like oh something like Vivian fancies me. He's just like oh yeah I really fancy you.
It's
I want to
great
give you
because
a big girly kiss on the bottom.
I
just
thought
like-
that was going to go so homophobic and dated, and it doesn't really. It's just about Vivian
No.
wanting to kiss Rick. And
Right.
he does say Vivian's gone all funny.
You know, and then he's just like he says, "It's like, oh wait, did I say that? Oh, sorry, I meant to say put a pickaxe in your spinal column." And of course, he's screaming it at the time. I don't know, like many people who could just scream that with such ferociousness, and be able just to deliver it like Adrian Edmondson did, because it's so fucking funny.
Well, and then
You
Vivian decides to kill himself out of boredom
Yeah.
because he says no future, which was actually the original.
Sex Pistols.
It's the original title to God Save the Queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Johnny Rotten wrote it as No Future, and the record company said make it God Save the Queen, and more people will buy it because they hate the Queen, and he was always pissed about it.
Yeah.
I never knew that. Wow. Pretty
Yeah.
cool.
But they do but then they just give up and watch TV, and there's so many jokes in this that I thought were in other episodes because they watch TV so often. They watch TV in the first one with nosing around. They watch TV during time after they time travel.
Right.
Nasty is all about watching video.
Do you have a video?
I can't even hear the word God video anymore because of this podcast. But it has my favorite joke where it closes down for the day, which, if you're younger than us, used to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They used to turn the TV off, and they actually do this joke in I think in Boring, where he goes where the sound comes on, and they say, "What does that sound mean?" He goes, "Very important. It means no more telly. Go to bed."
Yep.
And then, so I thought it was in that episode, but this has the better joke where Rick goes, "You can't tell me to stop watching telly." And one of the Queen's Royal Guard, the guard with the hat, goes, "Go to bed, Spotty."
Go to bed, Spotty.
And there have been many nights where I have gone to bed and thought that.
Wasn't that the same guy who destroyed the thing? Was just like, think once, think twice. There's the same guy, right?
I think don't drive your car on the pavement. Probably.
He's great. He's in a few episodes.
Well, there's a lot of cameos of the people that are in it a lot. Stephen Frost will come back, who's great in this episode, but he gets one line and it's not funny, and it's more like let's try to get everyone in that we liked.
Yeah, there's a lot of cameos, the writer cameos, and
and by the way, when Neil yells at the television and he's like, "Why didn't you play?" Because they're playing like God Save the Queen. And he's like, "Why don't you play something cool like Hawkwind?" Which Lenny was in before Motorhead, and Motorhead's been on this show.
Yep.
And it's funny because like this show, I mean, you know how the other episodes, like they seem to have like, this is an episode, this one actually seems to flow through, and it's just like, and I forget how it gets to this next part, so you guys can help me. But it gets to the point now where Rick is jumping up and down, excited because he's going home. He doesn't have to spend summer with these three losers. And then Mike is just like, and this is the coldest I've ever seen Mike.
And then Neil is like so mean when he's just like, everything that happened to you happened to me twice as bad and twice as long. It's like, it's not even funny at that point. It's just it's
mean.
Just cruel.
Mean. It's mean.
It's mean.
Yeah.
And it gets even meaner now when Alexei Sale walks in and just starts destroying everything. Oh, you owe me
including the elephant head.
Yes, the elephant head comes back and it has track marks on it.
Yeah.
No explanation.
Alexei Sale's just like, he's like, how's the TV? Vivian, smashed. He's like, oh, you owe me 97 pounds. you know,
Yep.
and he just keeps, and he starts smashing things himself. It's
Yep.
just like,
Yeah,
this is
I like this and I don't like this. I feel, Alexi Sale. Oh, here's another time to drink. Take a drink. When you say Alexi Sale is polarizing, take a drink.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. Oh, okay. If you insist.
Yeah, he's a little. I feel like again he's a bit much with like the ba 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 baran, but I do love the 3D stuff.
Oh,
the monster comes
With
up.
the monster coming out.
And Neil's wearing the glasses.
wow, that was amazing.
It reminds me. There's a when Albert Brooks made his first movie, Real Life, which is a total cult classic. And predates reality television by 25 years.
Mhm.
He did a trailer, which is one of those trailers that's not in the movie, where he's describing the movie, and then he's like, and I've heard from the studio that if you put gimmicks in it, more people will come. So we're gonna make this in 3D. And he puts on 3D glasses, and a guy walks in the room with a paddle ball. And the rest of the trailer is the guy doing the paddle ball, and Albert goes, "Wow, it's like you're right here."
Oh my God.
Which predates this episode, so it's the same joke, but I still like the joke, especially when the monster shows up.
Yep.
That was great. That was great.
And then I liked it because it actually worked to further the plot. A lot of the Alexi Sale stuff is just a stand-up bit almost.
Yeah, let's stop the episode and give.
But this actually furthers the plot along because now they're kicked out. And now they got to do something.
Yeah, and there's two non-starters in the middle. Like they talk to God, and then
God kills Alexi Sale.
Yeah, but then Alexi Sale is doing the real estate, but it goes on for about 20 seconds, and God kills him, and then that's the end of both of them.
And that's the end of Lexi Sale.
It
you know, it's just like that's the end of Lexi Sale in this series.
And here's where we go into the musical guest. And man, do I have a love-hate relationship.
Hate. Who are these guys?
One is Jules Holland, who became like a big music talk show host in England.
Okay.
Like later with Jules Holland became a thing. And I think he's playing the telly. It's a really nice telly.
It's a nice telly. It's a nice telly.
But I don't know. The Body Talk song, it's not even really a song.
It's awful. Even the cast is like it's awful. Vivian thinks it's awful.
And it may have just been them taking the piss out of the fact that they've been forced to put music in it, for budgetary reasons because of the BBC. And that's probably their final middle, their final flick in the V to the BBC saying, screw you.
Yeah, maybe it's
because it's unexplainably bad otherwise to me.
But I find it compelling. I don't know why. And you know what? It's another thing that's been stuck in my head. The way you walk, he's funny talk. That thick Londoner accent. It's never left my brain.
Oh God, sorry.
My body's talking. My body's shouting. And then he starts humping the bottom of the floor of the set. But we do get a new set. Which almost never happens.
When they're evicted.
Yeah, we get this alley set that has detail and it has scope. It looks like they tore down the backyard and put this alley up. And it's something they never do because when they go out, it's very much a flat. When they go to the bar, there's nothing in the bar. When Neil becomes a policeman, when he tries to join the army and Alexi's Mussolini, there's just a wall. It's like Python, but this is like a full set.
Yeah,
they did a good job.
Yeah, and then Lenny Henry
what to do.
Yeah, which is the plot. You're right, Joe. There is a plot. But then Lenny Henry shows up as a mailman that's Hitler.
Yes.
And I was like, I had in my notes, Lenny Henry shows up with an iron cross.
Yep.
He's wearing a wig. He has a mustache. Lenny Henry is a postman
Hitler.
And he's doing a bad Sherman accent.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And he gives them their test results, their final exam results.
Which barely came in the mail to the alley. And I love his line. You have come last in the whole world.
The whole world.
But he tells Rick. He tells Rick he was last. And of course, who shows up as number one? Neil.
Neil.
Yeah, all the best out of us. He's like so proud of that.
Yes. Well, they've been shitting on him the whole series.
Yeah.
Now he's finally the best at something.
Now he's on top.
Officially. He's officially
then-
the best at something.
And then Rick confuses destitute with prostitute, which could be a one-liner, but it turns into this whole other sketch,
Yeah.
which
You know?
I really like because
Which I really liked.
there's a bunch of things going into it because there's the dawn and the sun says hello, but then a girl shows up whose name is Dawn and she's jogging because it's early in the morning.
And that's what's her name, the writer. One of the
Is that
Lisa
Lisa
Mayer?
Mayer? Is
yeah, that's Lisa Mayer.
it?
yeah.
Oh,
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
because I actually
that was her cameo.
I actually wrote in the notes, I was like, this is a great character. It would have been great if she was in it before to pay off that, like, you know, she would take money from Rick to have sex with him,
Right.
but she wouldn't give him
Right.
money.
Give it money.
Right. You know, one of my favorite things is actually Mike again.
The monologue.
And that's like Gone with the Wind.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know, I
it's
swear to God,
direct
I'll
parody.
never be hungry again. Yeah, it's direct
Yeah.
parody of Gone with the Wind.
I always
was-
love that line. I'm never going back. You hear what? I said I'm never going back.
Go back.
So what do they try to? What plan do they come up with?
Oh, yeah. What are we gonna
Yeah.
do? Yeah, we're all gonna go.
You know,
And I
It's just
forget
like-
where it is, and please help me if you remember. But it reminded me of a reference to another joke where they do that. They're like, okay, here's the plan, and he goes, no, you actually have to come up with a plan. You just can't go. And I can't remember where that's in. It's a later show,
I don't know.
and nobody's helping.
That sounds like
Yeah.
a Blackadder, but
Maybe I feel like
maybe.
it's not a Simpsons, but I feel like
No.
it's something. But now we get to the bank robbery, which you think is going to be again this big like set piece, and it's a lot of little things happening
Yeah.
at the same time.
When they're huddled in front of the bank, and Mike's like, "Well, where's the nylon?" And
The
and
stocks.
Neil forgot. Yeah, the stocks. Thank you, the stocks. Where's the stocks? And like, of course, in typical Young Ones fashion, they totally botch it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the one
Fascist
thing,
pig bank.
yes, it
Yep.
said fashion big bank.
It actually says Fascist Pig Bank on the door.
Yeah.
But then, the real robbery happens, and
No.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I feel like the real robbery was unnecessary because you could have had them rob the bank and leave. Like you have this other complication of that the bank's already being robbed, and this is where we see Stephen Frost, and he just hands the guy the money, and then they bump into the guy and they take the money, and it's like that doesn't go anywhere. They could have just robbed the bank with the water pistol. They could have gotten the money, and then Neil could have said the water pistols, and then they could have freaked out, and ran. Like,
yeah,
it makes that sketch a little less focused, and
Yeah.
but then you also have the side thing, which I do like, and I know Howie loves, is
Yeah.
the teller that just says "Good morning, sir."
Good morning, sir. You know. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good
son.
morning, sir.
And there's
Good
another
morning.
cameo by somebody who's been in other episodes. She was in the Bolofsky time travel game show.
Ah, okay.
Was
That's what I've
she?
seen her before.
She announced him.
That's
She
right, I
was
saw
like,
her.
yeah.
Oh, that's right. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like they walk in and it's just what do you call it? She's or they just like, there's a very slight chance that if they discover these are water pistols, our plan won't work. A very slight chance, you know.
And then
I
they're
just
like,
think-
oh,
so-
we'll have to shoot one of the hostages. Let's shoot Neil.
No.
Okay,
Oh,
that'll help.
if that'll
I mean,
help.
They're only water pistols. That's great. That all works. That all
It
works.
all works.
You don't
know?
need. I'm just saying, you don't need the complication of another bank robber who, by the way, doesn't get a joke, doesn't get another line.
No.
Is only in 2 shots.
Yeah. Yep.
But
But I
I'm
love
wondering,
the-
was this longer and got cut down?
Yeah.
I don't know. I love the thing where it's just like, well, if we get on the one queue, then the other queue will start to move quicker, and then the other queue, and it's just like they're all like, and it's just like, oh my god, yeah, you're right. It's just like a lot of times you like when you go to a supermarket or something like that, you're like, shit, what line should I get on? Let me,
Yep.
and you're strategizing what line to get on, and it's just like it's funny because it's just that's exactly what you think when you're standing in line waiting to get taken care of. I think that,
Right.
And this is another
thought-
scene that's a greatest hits, as you said, Joe, because this always reminds me of the post office scene in the first season,
Yeah.
where he's yelling at the old man.
Mhm.
And I always
Oh,
think
yeah.
the old
Oh,
man is
yeah.
coming in this episode, but he's already been in the post office.
Yeah.
which arguably works better. And now I want to take a moment out
Mm-hmm.
because I know Howie's got a lot of feels about this.
Mhm.
What's that?
But they run out, they get in the car, they crash the car.
Like 6 feet away, he crashes right into a pole.
Car.
He
Right to a
drives
pole.
directly into a pole. He's parked by a pole and drives into it. But he kills FBG.
Oh,
Then you see
That
FBG
hurt.
floating away.
you know,
His spirit.
he's just like, I'll
floating
be
away.
waiting for you, you little wimp.
And Howie, I think it's good for you to take a moment. We're in the last episode.
Yeah.
If you want to do an in memoriam for SPG,
For
because
SPG.
as we've done this
SPG.
entire series, you have never let an SPG appearance go unremarked.
Right. Yeah, that was a hard scene to watch because you see like SPG like kind of like dead on the radiator.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like, oh no, not SPG. But then again, you would have thought SPG would have been dead like 10 episodes ago from being stomped, being hammered,
Being
stuck in a
beaten with a bat.
toaster. Yeah, thrown out to the shark, But it's a car accident that
Yep.
takes out our beloved SPG.
Yeah, and you notice in
You
that
know?
scene, the only kindness anybody shows anybody, it's Mike to Vivian. Mike and Vivian
Yeah.
have a relationship that's different than
You
everyone.
still have
he's like,
SPG. No, I don't.
he was
No, I
sleeping on the
don't.
radiator.
Oh my god.
And then,
now-
of course, Vivian
Go ahead,
loses his shit. Vivian just like
Yeah.
goes bonkers. And,
Yeah, but then Rick steals the double-decker bus, which for
Yeah.
some reason is in black and white.
Yeah,
yeah, it's true.
I don't know. I even wrote it down. I'm like, why is this in black and white? I'm like, is it supposed to go to like a crime thing, or did they just not get the coverage?
who knows? But the funny thing is that when he's sitting in that SPG like driver's seat, he picks up his glasses and he's like, "It's me," as if they wouldn't recognize some guy with a dumb red beret and that stupid
Right.
raincoat.
Yeah.
Know?
Well, Rick is
You know?
still high energy. I did like when they're all getting in the car, and Rick is so excited that they robbed the bank, even though they didn't. And I had the subtitles on just to write down jokes that I missed. But he's like, "We did it, and it was mostly me."
You
know? I love it when they're first going into the bank, just going back just a little bit. He's just like I'm on the edge of tomorrow, and I'm just like, and he just goes into this like this whole big, like this diatribe of like, don't look for me now because I'm gone tomorrow. It's just like, and then Mike's like, all right, so let's do it right now. He's like, what do you mean right now? Which is perfectly Rick, because he's always been this guy that has just been like, let's do this. All right, let's do it.
He's the ineffectual lefty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of talking, doesn't do anything.
You know what? It's what like Life of Brian targeted so perfectly. People
Yeah.
from Judea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So they get on the bus, and by the way, they all sing "Summer Holiday," which is the title of the episode, which I looked up.
Cliff Richard.
Yes, it is
Cliff
a Cliff Richard
Richard
song. Yes, and then it's the only time Rick gives a monologue that sums everything up. He says we are young ones, and he also says we are bachelor boys, which is the name of the book.
Right.
Mhm. Yep.
Which, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is the book, which I bought for $3.25 on eBay.
Yep.
So I read about 3 pages of it.
Yeah.
But you can't.
But you got to have it.
It's one of the very few Young Ones merchandise that was ever made.
Yeah.
And it's still out there, so it's very easy to find. So if you're a diehard fan and judging from our hit numbers, the people that are watching us are the diehard fans.
All the diehards.
You can still find Bachelor Boys, the Young One book.
Oh, easily. Oh, eBay. Yeah. Easily.
I'm sure it was
$7 maybe, whatever.
Yeah. Like when I was 8, I had a Muppet Show book that was basically the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
So the whole show ends on the pun of them yelling cliff, and they go over a cliff.
Yeah, it's through a Cliff Richards concert poster, by the way.
Yes, but through a billboard, which, by the way,
Yeah.
is the same joke that Steve Martin puts in Bowfinger.
Yeah.
Right. Which, by the way, just this just screams this whole episode of like just screams this through all the episodes. Don't let Vivian drive. Do not let Vivian drive.
That's true, because Rick steals the bus, but Vivian is driving.
Yep.
Vivian is driving, but he's not happy unless there's mayhem.
Yeah.
So if there's anyone who's going to drive off a cliff, it's going to be Vivian.
But it's not deliberate because he's also really happy, and he's happy to sing the Cliff Richard song.
He really is.
Which he's made fun of Cliff Richard so often.
Well, it's one of the few times when we get to
First
see.
episode.
It's one of the few times we get to see them collectively happy. It's like they're getting away, they're singing the song, and then of course they go through the billboard, and the bus goes over the cliff. But my favorite thing is the bus lands on the ground and smashes, and then you hear a voice say, "Whew, that was close!" And the
It's all four of them.
in flames. The bus explodes into
There's
flames.
all four of them, and and that's it.
That's it. Done.
And then I love the credits, where the credits are like the young ones were, and they list everybody who was in the show.
Well, you know what? And I watched it again, and at the time I always thought, you and I talked about this watching it. I always thought they listed everyone that ever appeared on the Young Ones, like it was like every cameo. And then I looked at it this time, and I'm like, that's not actually what happened, because I was looking for names like Dawn French, Robbie Coltrane, Jennifer Saunders, who were in the show but not in this episode. And what it is they just say the Young Ones were, and they list every name but without a department.
Right.
So the cameraman is in there, the costume designer is in there, the producer is in there, the production, and I've never seen this before or since, and I think it's great. They're all listed as just being part of this show. This is everyone who was part of this show, which I thought was great. And we end with like some ska saxophone thing.
Something like that. Yeah, it's not even the theme or whatever. It's like some sort of like whatever music that was. It's not even the horn whatever that they usually end with. It's some sort of like, music that is completely unfamiliar. But I guess it's the way to end the show. It's totally the way that they go out,
Right.
And it's just it was great. It was great,
Well, it reminds me in a lot of ways of Goodbye, the end of Blackadder 4, which happens in 1989, and in that one, that one's a lot more sentimental, and that one works. It never gets maudlin, it never gets sappy. It's like it's odd because it's the end of like the entire series, although they didn't know it at the time. They had planned a Blackadder 5. But it's like actually really heartfelt, and that just ends with Blackadder 1989. And I feel like Ben Elton did this for a joke, and then when he got to do it again in Blackadder, he was like, you know what, let me really actually underpin this with true emotion.
For sure. Absolutely, for sure. It's a great show. It was just a really a very appropriate ending. Just a very appropriate ending, and I think they knew that was it.
Yeah,
like we said, when we first started tonight, I think they knew that was it. They went out the way they could have died 100 different ways in these episodes. There was an explosion at the end.
They had a giant eclair fall on them.
Yeah, they could have gone out, but you know what? It was just like, usually it was just kind of like there was the mayhem or whatever. This time it was just like, there was mayhem, but I think we made it out of it. Oh, that was close. And then no, you didn't. Boom. End of show. End of series.
And as you said, this is the end
classic.
End of the characters. There are a lot of other shows. There's a lot of other things they did together. I mean, as I said, they did a show called Filthy Wretch in Cat Flap. Christopher Ryan wasn't really a big part of their things moving forward, but that lasted one season. It didn't quite work. I've seen they put the pilot episode on the Young Ones DVDs, and it wasn't as good. And then they did Bad News, which was their parody of hair metal, which is fantastic. They put out an album as Bad News, and it's really, really funny. I remember an artist I was working with at the time on a comic had it, and he never heard of the Young Ones, and he was playing it for me. He's like, "Oh, this is really, really funny," and I'm listening to it. I'm like, "Can I see that?" And it was on cassette, and I looked at their faces like, "This is the Young Ones," and they went on to just do a lot of stuff together. As we mentioned, Bottom is a really good show in the '90s, and it's just Rick and A doing slapstick. But it is that feeling of like they're guys in their 30s that are going nowhere. And that ran 3 seasons. That ran longer than the young ones.
Right.
I don't think it had the impact, but it ran longer. And these guys continue to work together on and off. And Chris Ryan is in Bottom. He's a guest star in several episodes of Bottom.
Dave Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Dave
Spud
Hedgehog. Spud, what was it?
Spud Gum.
Spud Gun. What was Dave Hedgehog? What did I just say?
Dave Hedgehog was the big guy that hung out with Chris Ryan because they had like a tall, short thing going on. Remember, there was like a giant guy with a beard.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Who's
right.
not
That's
in
right.
the young ones, but
He's not in the young ones.
But Bottom is good, but it's not quite as deep. It's not quite as energetic. It doesn't have as many
But
facets.
it doesn't have Neil.
True.
I think it needed Neil. Look, Aid and Rick are wonderful. Let's not kid ourselves. They're great, But the thing is that Neil brought a certain thing to the show that he was the softer one. He was the nicer one, the more sensitive one. And what happened? He got completely shit on by everyone, And that's something that with Bottom, I think Richie and Eddie they just don't have that. There's no Neil to fall on.
Yeah, they're
There's
more
no
isolated.
They're more isolated. It's
that show
also
is really about the two of them, and it's like if you like Rick,
and it's great. It's great, but it doesn't have that certain sort of facet of Nigel Planer and Neil as Neil, and of course Chris Ryan.
Well, speaking of being done, we're done. We've finished these
it.
all. I am not going to get into what does the show mean. What importance does it have? Howie, you and I, let's do one more episode and just talk about what the show was.
Sure.
We'll wrap up this episode. We'll do one more. It'll just be the two of us who started this thing together.
Yep. Okay.
And we'll be closing it down. I know we're talking about what do we do next? I don't know. And we'll talk about that on the next episode. We might bring Cabinet Comics back. We might do. There is a podcast on Blackadder since we started this show, so I wouldn't want to retread something.
Step on their toes. Yeah.
No. But we've talked about, do we do horror? Do we do metal? Do we do animation? All of these things that we both are into. Do we bring back Caffeinated Comics? I have had requests to bring back Caffeinated Comics. We'll figure that out. But for now, we'll just wrap up this episode. Joe, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you.
Great to have you,
I
buddy.
hope everyone gets to hear you and hears all of your
I hope so.
Yes.
Whatever thing we turn into next, you certainly be a part of.
Oh,
I'd be welcome to join. Thank you.
We'll
that'd be wonderful. Yup.
And Howie, without getting too maudlin, just you that was close to a blow up. You and I will talk on the next episode.
On this pump sitcom. Oh, let's just say.
And with that, you're down in it. We will talk to you guys for our wrap-up epilogue in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks for watching us, and thanks for listening to us.
It's done.
Next episode will be done, but I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about.
No.
Because we may not be the young ones very long.